10 o'clock tomorrow morning, it's the start of the Betfred World Snooker Championship, and I'm delighted to welcome, well, it should be from the BBC commentary team, it's John Virgo. John, come on, what's happened? You're not going to be at the Crucible for the first time in years.
No, well, they say timing is everything, and it just coincided with the time that we decided to buy a place in Spain, and of course with the new lockdown rules and the isolation, I'm stuck in Spain, unfortunately, because if I came back to the UK, I couldn't work and I have to spend 14 days in quarantine. So I'm going to have to do what everybody else does and watch it on the telly.
John, I know how much you love being at the Crucible and how much you love being part of the BBC commentary team. So you must be gutted.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I've been going there since it started at the Crucible in 1977 as a player, started commentating in the early 80s, and yeah, it's a big wrench. But as it turned out, we wouldn't have been going into Sheffield. I think the BBC commentators are doing it from Stockley Park near Heathrow. But nevertheless, yeah, it's not ideal, and yeah, as you say, it'll be a big wrench not to be there.
Are you going to still try and enjoy the action on the TV?
Oh, absolutely. I've been watching the qualifiers, and I've got to be honest with you. All right, there was nobody at the qualifiers, but the pressure that these players seem to be under, and I've never seen so much twitching. Understandable, because everybody wants to get to the Crucible. And I think as far as the players concerned, the fact whether there'll be 300 there and nobody there, it's the World Championship, it's the Betfred World Championship, and it's the biggest thing in snooker, no doubt.
John, what is it about? You know, I've been lucky enough to go for a number of years now, as you know, and you know, I love the place. But what is it about the Crucible? I mean, it shouldn't be the home of a World Championship sport, should it? But it just works, doesn't it?
It works. Well, we're talking about a snooker table, which is 12 foot by 6 foot. And if, you know, we play places, Wembley Conference Centre, 2,500 people. But to be in all honesty, you're so far away from the action, you finish up watching on a television screen anyway. Whereas at the Crucible, no matter where you sit in the audience, you have a view. The atmosphere, the theatre atmosphere it creates is second to none. And everybody feels as though they're involved with what's happening on those one or two table situations. And it has an atmosphere all of its own. And it's tried and tested, been there since 1977. And I've never been to a better venue for atmosphere.
And you've experienced a semi-final. You got beat, unfortunately, in 1979. So you know what it's like to play in a two-table setup. You know what the one-table setup's like.
Yeah. The one table is, well, it's by the time you get to that, hopefully you're playing at your best, you're comfortable in the surroundings, and yeah, then you feel as though you're really in the heart of, oh, let's be fair, Mark, at the end of the day, you've got a chance of being world champion. And being the world champion is what everybody wants. If they pick up a cue and they've got any ability whatsoever, you want to be world champion. And that's what the Crucible and that's what the World Championship gives you.
What takes a world champion, and what does it take to make a world champion?
Well, obviously you need all the ability in the world, but it is an endurance test. I can't think of any competition, particularly not an individual sport, that lasts for 17 days. Even Wimbledon wouldn't last for that long. So you need to stay focused. You need to have a game that is consistent. You can't just be hot 1 minute and cold the next. And it's the one with all the ability, but also the one who can produce consistently. And temperament obviously has a big thing to do this. And particularly this year, when the players are going to have to be in a bubble, they're not going to be able to mix with the friends as such. So they've got to have their own counsel. And it's going to be very tough for the players. It really is. And I think we could see quite a few shocks this year.
I think we've got to praise World Snooker, the BBC, Eurosport, and the players for even getting to this stage. I mean, I was in a lot of the meetings during April and May. You know, the worst case scenario was we weren't going to have a World Championship this year.
Yeah, well, that was it. And I think everybody has been desperate to get this on. And I know, and I've just heard from yourself this morning that Anthony Hamilton has pulled out, which is sad for Anthony, because obviously, as we're saying about the World Championship, it's the biggest thing in the snooker calendar. And the fact that he doesn't feel as though he feels as though it's too risky. And I know there's a lot of people out there, but I think the World Snooker has done the right thing. Hopefully with social distancing, this virus isn't going to grab all the people, but everybody's entitled to an opinion. And as I say, feel sorry for Anthony, but I think it's important we should try and get the show on the road.
There obviously is concerns from some of the players, and Anthony Hamilton's just pulled out, like you said, but how different do you think it will be then, or do we not know? We think there's going to be a crowd of about a third full. I mean, I presume for most of the players, they're probably thinking some crowd's better than no crowd at all.
Yeah, well, you would like to think so. I think it's an experiment which the government are trying, and fair play to Barry Hearn for getting this going. I think it will create an atmosphere, but it's also a pilot to prove whether other sports can do it. And okay, we're being a sort of guinea pig in the game, but I firmly agree that if we don't start making moves where we can social distance and these events happen, I mean, all these snooker players at the end of the day, that's how they earn a living. And if you just cancelled everything until you could get a large crowd in, then a lot of these people, like the economy itself, would be on the knees.
We kick off 10 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
Judd Trump starts on table one. That's what the defending champion does.
Yeah.
You were in the commentary box last year. How good was Judd Trump in that final? Because he didn't just beat John Higgins, he battered John Higgins.
Yeah, I mean, he had one particular session. I'll tell you a funny story. A friend of mine rang me up when Judd had won all the frames on that evening session. And unfortunately, I didn't see the session. And my friend said it was just like Alex Higgins at his best, which to me is one of the biggest compliments you could ever give anybody, you know. And that is what Judd was capable of. And to do it in a World Championship final just shows you how far he's come, particularly over the last few years. Because if you'd have asked me 2 or 3 years ago, it looked like Judd was going to be like a Jimmy White, such a great player, but never having won the world. But last year he proved he can do it. And I have to say that since he won the world, he's gone from strength to strength. He's looked the man to beat in all tournaments.
Yeah, 6 ranking titles this year for Judd Trump, which is a hell of an achievement.
Yeah, sensational stuff.
What is it about the Crucible Curse then, John? I mean, everyone's mentioned it a lot in the last 24 hours. No new champion has ever defended his crown. If you think of the names,
I know.
Obviously, Steve Davis, Stephen Hendry, latterly Ronnie OSullivan, you know, Mark Williams. The names are phenomenal. So what is it about this Crucible Curse?
Well, I don't know. I mean, if you ask me from a sort of personal point of view, I mean, you talk about Steve Davis, he lost 10-1 to Tony Knowles, you know. I think the only thing I could put my finger on it, we've just mentioned a lot of these qualifiers now coming through. Now, they've been having some very hard matches, so they match sharp, if you like. So they'll come out during this tournament playing players who, let's be fair, haven't played, particularly this season, haven't played for a while. So they might be a little bit rusty and just a little bit off the mark against players who we know have all the ability in the world, who are match sharp. So that might just give them a slight edge.
But no offence to Tom Ford, you'd expect Judd to get off to a decent start, wouldn't you, on Friday?
Well, absolutely. But Tom Ford is a good scorer. He's a high scorer. He's made maximums in matches, so I wouldn't dismiss him. But as I say, Judd, the way he's played this season, but he's not been in actual match games for a couple of months. So that might just find him out. I think the early part of this match, particularly that morning session, starting at 10 o'clock in the morning, I think we might have some idea after those first 9 frames as to which way this match is going. But if Tom Ford can relax, he's a very good player, Tom, but sometimes his temperament, and he'll freely admit this, does let him down. But if he can produce his A game then Judd will have his work cut out. As I say, I think that first 9 frames is going to be very important.
Staying in the top half, 2:30 on Saturday, 4 times winner, finalist the last 3 years, John Higgins, versus the 2005 finalist, Matthew Stevens. Has there been a better match player at the Crucible than John Higgins?
No, I don't think so. And he never ceases to amaze me. Getting to the final last year was a tremendous performance. The year before against Mark Williams, he just keeps producing it and producing it. And as you say, his all-round game is second to none. Although I do think that Matthew Stevens, when we talk about great players who've never won the championship, Matthew Stevens would come high on that list for me. And Matthew Stevens is not going to be any pushover for John. John will know that, of course. And that, to me, is a very interesting match. And I could see it going either way, to be honest with you. But John Higgins has surprised me many times before, and he probably will surprise me again. But I think that's a close one.
So what is it about Higgins and the Crucible, do you think? Why is it getting going?
I think he just loves the longer frames. A lot of players, you know, these best of 9s that we play most of the season, you know, sometimes you can never really get into the match, whereas John Higgins likes getting into the match. He likes these longer matches, gives you a chance. The pressure's not on immediately. You can play your way into it. And as we say, his all-round game, he can adjust it to any opponent. You can't do that in the best of 9, but you can in the best of 19s and best of 25s. And I think that's what John Higgins' strength is. If he thinks the opponent is playing a bit better than him, then he'll change his game, make things a little bit awkward, tighten up a little bit, throw his opponent off his stride. All the things that a great match player can do, John Higgins does that.
Moving to the bottom half of the draw, 7 o'clock on Friday night. 3 times world champion Mark Williams versus 3 times semi-finalist Alan McManus. Is there a more laid-back man in snooker than Mark Williams?
No, without a doubt. I mean, when he won it 2 years ago, I was absolutely amazed because I thought he was past his sell-by date. I've got to, and I think Mark did as well. He was already talking about he was now thinking of hanging up his cue. But the performance he produced there and the way he carried the title of world champion again, you know, was just fantastic. And yeah, he's a credit. You know, we look back at that class of 92, which was John Higgins, Mark Williams, Ronnie O'Sullivan. It is quite amazing that they're still there and still at the Crucible. And I think Mark at the moment, what's he ranked? 3 in the world? It's just fantastic the way the longevity of their careers has been. And of course, Alan McManus, who was a former Masters champion, he's done well to get through. And it'll be an interesting game because there's not much these two don't know about the game of snooker.
Possibly the quickest game of the first round. Ronnie O'Sullivan versus Tepcha.
Oh, yeah. Tie of the round for me. Absolutely. Fastest player in the world, playing the second fastest player in the world. I think it'll suit Ronnie because he won't have to think about somebody slowing him down and somebody making it hard work because Tepcha will play a very similar game to Ronnie. It'll be quick fire, potting, break building. Should suit Ronnie down to the ground. But once again, I'll go back to the point I was making earlier. Tepcha has played a few qualifying matches. He's match sharp. How much practice Ronnie's been doing at home, I don't know. But the only thing you've got to remember is that Ronnie had a year out once and still come back and won the World Championship. So, as we would say in horse racing terms, he does well fresh.
Yeah, he certainly did that, yeah, didn't he? I put this question to Ronnie before, but he denied it. Don't you think Ronnie will actually wake up one day and think, I should have won more than 5 World Championships?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, and Ronnie knows that he could have won more, but the problem is, it's a hard game, you know, snooker. It's an individual sport, a lot of travelling, and listen, we watch them when they're on the match table and we think, oh, that's great, I'd love to be there. But the hours of practice you've got to put in to have the finished product to be at the Crucible and whatever, that is the hard part. And I think that's what Ronnie, you know, would like to find other things to do. We know he likes running and this, that and the other. It's just tough, all the practice. But I think when he goes out on that match table, then, he's there to play. Although we've got to remember last year when he lost to James Cahill, who hasn't even qualified this year, that was probably the biggest shock ever at the Crucible. And I think it's only because in the early part of that match, and this can happen, once again, if you're not match sharp, you just take your opponent too lightly. And if you're all square or there's nothing in it going into that second session, anything can happen. He's got to stamp his authority early on. And particularly with a player of the quality of Tepcha I know. So, very interesting game, and to me, the pick of the first round matches.
Another first round match, 2:30 on Friday, Ding Junhui versus Mark King. Mark King, the former Northern Ireland winner. Ding Junhui, 2016 beaten finalist, hit an informed Mark Selby, didn't he? He looked fantastic that tournament. Can Ding Junhui get back to the form he was playing at 2 or 3 years ago, do you think?
Well, we've always said about Ding Junhui, you watch him play, you watch his break building, he's as good as anyone when he's in the balls. Beautiful little touch shots he can play. Just question his temperament, really, the fact that he hasn't won the World Championship. He's won ranking events, but he's just been a little bit weak to me on the temperament side. But there's no doubt in his ability. Now, maybe this time off that he's had so he can work on his game might suit him. I really don't know. Obviously, he'd be a big, strong favourite against Mark King, but Mark King, as I say, has gone through those qualifiers. He'll be match sharp, and Ding should win. But as I say, take nothing for granted in these early round matches. But Ding would be a contender for me if he produced the game that we know he can.
We're about to embark on this marathon, John. Who is going to lift the famous old trophy then in 17 days' time, in your opinion?
Well, I think you've got to take a view. I read somewhere that the bottom half was tougher than the top half. When I've looked at it, I think they're equally matched. I think Ronnie, as I say, with Tepcha, similar type of player, and then you look at who he's going to play in the bottom quarter. It would be just off the top of my head, I think either Robertson, Murphy, or Selby. So he's only going to have to play one of those. Judd in the top half, we'd all love to see a Trump-Ronnie final, apart from the other people who support the players. That's not beyond the realms of possibility, the way I see the draw. So, but I've always said this, the best player that I have ever seen is Ronnie OSullivan. So it's very hard for me to oppose him, but all will be revealed, I think, in these first few days to see who's got the game face on and who has not been affected by the fact there's not a lot of match practice from the top players. But it'd be Ronnie for me, and if it was a Ronnie Judd Trump final, well, all our prayers would be answered for the game. And it does go the 17 days and be great for snooker and great for Betfred and everybody who loves the game.
John, I'm gutted you're not going to be there. You're a Salford lad. We started in Salford as a company, and Fred and Peter very well.
Yeah.
I tell you what I am going to miss. Right. Ronnie's, we're giving £200, by the way, for every century. And if we get to 80, we'll give £25,000 to Jessie May, again, the official snooker charity. But I tell you what I'm going to miss. Ronnie OSullivan's on 94. He's got a black on the bottom cushion. I'm going to miss your commentary. We're going to miss that, John. I'm being serious.
I know. Well, I'm going to miss it, Mark. But as I say, it's strange times we're living in. And anyway, thankfully, the tournament's going ahead, and hopefully it will go ahead without a hitch, and everybody can see snooker at its best. And that's all I'm hoping for, and roll on next year.
And John, will you join us a few times during the tournament?
Been my pleasure, Mark. Been my pleasure.
There we are, John Virgo previewing the Betfred World Snooker Championship, which starts at 10 o'clock on Friday morning.
Betfred, proud sponsor of the World Snooker Championship.